of each element to his liking. While he's far from achieving mastery, Arthur can still activate it. He bestows his mana upon Curtis, internalizing just how careless he has been the entire time. He was far too confident in the dungeon and didn't think anything would go wrong. After all, he's gotten powerful, and that left him arrogant in some regard. Curtis has enough mana to activate his first phase now, as Arthur refuses to remain arrogant. Beyond entering the first phase, Curtis's beast will reject him. At last, he's able to cast the World Howl attack, incinerating the blockade clean. This gives everyone the exit to leave. Professor Glory is slashing monsters left and right. Despite her 2 deviant glass shards, Glory is struggling against the Queen Snarlers. Everything seems okay until Arthur spots Tessia completely exhausted in her state. Unfortunately, her core is acting up in the worst possible place. He assists her and wonders how 2 Queen Snarlers popped up to begin with. While they're no more than B-class monsters, it's the fact that Glory should easily be handling them. Instead, she's facing trouble despite being an A-class adventurer. Suddenly, the ground shakes as Arthur spots Professor Glory full of despair. One monster emerges with a venomous and dark aura. This beast is something you'd only encounter in the worst possible nightmare. An exhausted Glory instructs her students to run away, but she's literally bitch-slapped by this giant monstrosity. Glory barely holds on with her blades before getting attacked a second time. The monster is drawn to her by her glass shards as she doesn't want to risk her students getting injured. But even Arthur knows this is the worst possible outcome for their professor. Claire insists that they leave at once, but our boy isn't a quitter, and he hands them Tessia. In this insane situation, Arthur chooses to fight, even when Curtis is trying to stop him. Arthur is done playing around as he casts blue flames, insisting that they go. They can't believe that he casted blue flames as they've yet to see the full extent of his powers. Glory is faced against ruthless odds as she battles this terrifying creature. She couldn't ever have possibly heard of a creature evolving like this. All of a sudden, she hears Arthur's voice commanding her to get down. The boy single-handedly swoops into battle with his flames, shocking even the professor with his new elemental affinity. Glory is pissed that he came back despite her strict orders for her students to leave. But Arthur cleverly responds that he isn't just a student, but also a professor. The monster pummels the ground, launching both of them away in a shockwave. Arthur expresses his observation on how not a single one of Glory's attacks were penetrating through. That's why he jumped right into the fight to see how it went for him instead. Professor Glory is okay with his involvement, but still curious if the rest of them made it out safely. Arthur glances at the back and sees Lucas being a pissed little monkey staring at him. He confirms that everyone has left as Lucas too walks away. Professor Glory activates her flames and explains that the creature couldn't possibly tail them outside the dungeon, so they should prioritize weakening it until they can mark their own escape. The ugly creature stares at them in terror. Arthur wants the professor to keep the monster busy for at least 10 seconds because he's working out a plan. Glory handles the creature on her own, struggling to make her stand. However, she couldn't possibly have expected Arthur to be a tri-elemental mage instead of the dual-elemental mage she thought he was. The boy charges a bunch of his elemental affinities in unison, before instructing Glory to move out of his way. In a single strike, Arthur chants, "Burst Blade Storm," and hammers the beast with a powerful swing. His attack makes the creature growl in pain and agony, but just like last time, his body suffers a major backlash, experiencing yet another dislocated bone. Arthur is about to get swiped by the monster when Glory grabs him and insists on running away. Unfortunately, his blade is still plunged inside the creature's body, and he couldn't retrieve it. Having made their escape, both of them are utterly horrified when they see this monster emerging from the dungeon's entrance. It stabs Arthur's calf with a painful claw, making him wail in pain. Professor Glory attempts to prepare her sword, but then we get to see a close-up. A close-up of this unfathomable creature with beaming yellow and purple eyes. Arthur senses that something's about to happen and tells Glory to back off. But by that time, the creature explodes along with the ground, making Arthur crash inside the dungeon on his own. In his final-ditch effort, he tries to activate a wind element, but unfortunately, a boulder comes crashing down and hits his head, knocking him out before he's able to cast the spell. Arthur's consciousness fades as he descends into the deep, dark gallows of the dungeon on his own. Right before impact, he regains consciousness and struggles to keep himself alive with an earth enhancement. Unfortunately, his powers are waning, and by this point, his tenacity is the only reason he's holding on. But even that fails with Arthur plummeting again. This time, he goes for a wind-based magic approach to soften the fall. The thing is, he doesn't have enough mana, and that's a problem. Pouring the last bits of his strength, he does his best to lighten the fall by using a wind-based current attack. The brief tornado slows down his descent until the boy eventually makes full contact with the ground at last. Arthur's body slowly regains some of its energy as he manages to get back up while holding his head. Thankfully, he sees his weapon in the distance. Sylvia's beast will is the reason he's functioning right now, supplying him with regeneration and sharp senses. The boy pulls out his blade from the creature's body and understands the situation he's in. It's going to take a while for him to climb back up a hole so high. He scouts around for an opening, and interestingly finds a path that leads to running water. In his injured state, he follows the path and reaches the waterfall. There, he navigates through the waterfall only to find himself horrified by what he sees. A graveyard of adventurers, all killed ruthlessly without fail. Hearing a cough nearby, Arthur is made alert and quickly follows the voice asking for help. He looks around hopelessly but can't find anything, so he asks the person to speak one more time. The boy is utterly horrified to see their body. This person is none other than the beautiful Lance Alea, her legs severed and her body impaled brutally. He is instantly reminded of the memories they shared, and can't believe the fact that a competent Lance was reduced to such a position. A white core mage being one of the strongest there is, and now they're nothing more than a pool of blood. Arthur attempts to heal her with what's left of his powers. She can't even recognize him anymore because she's also lost her sight. The boy reminds her that he's the kid she met at the academy, the same one who reminded her of her brother. Alia suddenly remembers but wonders how he even got here. Her condition is critical as she coughs blood. Arthur insists she doesn't talk and attempts to heal her. She helplessly grabs his hand and requests to stop. After all, even he knows that saving her is impossible. Arthur apologizes for his shortcoming, even though she's in a much better state now than before. He wonders if there's anything in his powers he could do to help her, but Alea simply shakes her head. Arthur finds himself in frustration and can't fathom what the hell went down in this place. What could possibly make such a mess out of a white core mage? In her dying state, Alea explains that the only reason she's even alive is because someone forced her to suffer through revenge for even laying a single hand on him. She casts a small stone and shares it with Arthur, then requests the boy to draw near. Despite her shattered core, Alea thinks she's capable of showing him what happened a while ago. Arthur experiences a clump of her memories all the way back when the battle mages arrived to take down the serpent. They successfully beat this monster without trouble, but something bothered them. The group of battle mages arrived in front of a warrior in black, staring them down. In a flash of a second, he impaled their bodies in a massacre. Before long, the place was filled with suspended bodies, and yet the man didn't move an inch from his position. A close-up of this fucker is revealed and he looks terrifying. He decides to give Alea two options for her life. The first was to fight him and suffer the same fate. The second one was for her to kill each of her team members to prioritize her own survival. It was a brutal dilemma with no easy way out. Being the Lance that she is, Alea decided to place her bets in a fight. But nothing mattered, as each of her men were impaled no differently from her. This gloomy and mysterious man thinks their efforts are in vain as the war is soon to come. Interestingly, Alea was capable of smacking his head with her vines, which resulted in a chipped piece of his horns. Now infuriated, the monster decided to make her suffer the most out of all. Severing her arm from her body, he impaled not only her but the rest of her men. Then this bastard came up to her and grabbed both her legs before ripping them off clean. Finally, he wanted to make her suffer in the most agonizing manner, so he took both her eyes out too. The poor mage experienced ruthless horror and the worst fate imaginable. And then she went through the fate of hearing all of her men die while she couldn't even see them. Having witnessed such a traumatic memory, Arthur vomits at the thought. Alea apologizes and understands that not a single person deserves seeing something so horrific, but it was necessary. The boy argues that he's the only one who is capable of passing information ahead. He's content that he was able to know the pain and suffering she went through. Arthur thanks Lance Alea for fighting for the kingdom. The poor girl, in absolute pain and agony, breaks her facade and reveals her tear-filled state, begging for another chance at life. Nobody wants to die, and that's just the reality. Arthur finds himself helpless before her and hugs Alea, right when she's the most vulnerable she can be, right when she's the most scared in her life. He tells her that he's here and won't leave her no matter what. Finally, Alea's life comes to an abrupt end as she reminisces about her final memory. Poor girl. The boy persuaded himself, believing that somehow Alea's death wasn't in vain. He buried the warriors and learned that there was more than just one demon. While he was unaware how many, it was clear as day that they had a goal of their own. It's no different from the time he met one at Sylvia's cave. This demon either wanted Sylvie or the whole of the Dicathan continent. And despite his quadra-elemental powers, Arthur at his current level is so weak that he doesn't see him beating one of them. He grabs Alea's blood-filled body and understands that from now on, he can no longer risk being complacent in a war that's about to break loose. He wipes her face clean and understands the pure necessity of becoming even stronger than before. The boy coats her body with his ice magic, before leaving a flower, decorating her remains. Arthur emphasizes that he'll send others to retrieve her once he gets out. Not just her, but also the rest of these guys. We see a shot of them. All of them he has buried with his own two hands. He turns to see Sylvie just around the corner and expresses that he's okay, even though Arthur has experienced a lot for one day. He thinks it's time for them to just get the hell out of the place, as there's not much more for them to do. And that's what happens, as Sylvie takes off to the skies, leaving behind the so-called low-level dungeon that was going to be used for training. Walking his way to the entrance, Arthur is stopped by the guards until they spot that he's Arthur Lewin from the Xyrus Academy. The guard realizes that he's returning from the brutal incident that the other students reported on. He immediately instructs another guard to inform the academy and the guild at once. It turns out that they were already planning to put together a rescue team for the boy. The guard wants to fetch a healer for the boy, but Arthur stops him, expressing that he just wants to go home right now. He doesn't want to report anything to the academy until tomorrow. The guard understands and lets him off. In the next scene, the boy arrives back at home, standing before his house, realizing that everyone inside is probably worried sick for him. At the same time, if he goes in, he'll have to talk through everything. Right now, Arthur is so fragile that he thinks he can't handle going inside. He recovers Aaliyah's lance badge and recalls her dying words. The poor girl suffered so much horror and loneliness stuck in that place, and she didn't want to die. He thought that somehow, in some way, she could get a second chance at life, just like he did. Since he didn't go in, Reynolds decides to show up without pressuring his son. He comments on the beautiful Aurora and how close it is because of the city. Understanding that his son must have gone through some real terror, Reynolds offers him a space to just relax. He also reminds Arthur that her mother can't heal major wounds, and no differently from him, she too has scars that she hasn't grown out of. That's why he doesn't want Arthur to take the burden of forcing himself, as every person has a personal battle they need to fight. He shows his promise, care, and support for his son, claiming that he'll be here for Arthur no matter what, not until he comes out as a winner. Reynolds leaves words of wisdom that I'm sure all of you could also follow. He says that life isn't just one long battle, but rather a bunch of small battles, and it's alright to get beat up and worn out sometimes. Hearing those words, Arthur begins to tear up in defeat. His father's voice is the only thing offering him comfort, telling him that he should stand back on his feet and persevere until he wins the war. That's how the night ends. The next day, Arthur's observing Academy when Good Sky makes her appearance. He called her here and left Sylvie at home too. The director is glad that he's maximizing his rest, which is why Arthur intends to go shopping with his family later. Drawing nearer, Good Sky worriedly asks what happened. She already knows about some of the situation from Glory's perspective. Arthur turns to her and merely shows her Alea's battle tag, causing the woman to experience a jolt of horror and despair. She couldn't possibly accept it, but Arthur confirms that Alea's dead. The rest of the team is left in the bottom floor too. Good Sky realizes the danger that comes with the situation. With a lance killed, it's no mistake that their enemies are already here. Good Sky wants to urgently know if Arthur was able to see what caused the incident. Instead of saying yes, he goes with a denial. The director understands the seriousness of the situation and plans to inform the council. She thinks the matter has just gone way beyond Arthur's capabilities, and the rest can only be handled with the lances. The boy is seriously hoping that she's right, hoping that they'll take care of it. It's shopping time. Arthur and his family are exploring a bunch of different venues and having fun. They're getting dragged by Tabitha to visit all kinds of stores. The boy curiously asks if there's a place that sells training materials. She thinks he means elixirs and tells him to visit the shop around the corner. Alice wants to come along, but Ellie is obsessed with the current shop. Arthur thinks it's alright and leaves them to have fun for a while, including Sylvie, who feels trapped while our boy deems her a sacrifice for the cause. He's walking among the crowd until he spots a tiny grave and a broken flower. The scene floods his brain with the memories of what happened. He walks past anyway. Arthur reaches the store that is supposedly going to sell him important elixirs, but he's extremely underwhelmed and thinks the place probably sells poisons instead. Inside, the boy finds himself in shock when he fails to sense an old man just next to him. The old man teases him and begs for a couple of changes. Arthur wonders what led to this guy ending up like this. Still, like a good gentleman, he helps him out. Unfortunately, our boy overextended and accidentally handed the fool a silver coin. But before he's able to whip out a copper coin, the old fart is already long gone. Arthur experiences dread at the loss of his money. Interestingly, he finds a ring imbued with magic and wonders if it's some kind of test from the store owner. Arthur grabs the handle and opens it up, shocked to find the same bastard inside the store. He hollers at him for stealing the coin and putting up a fake persona. The smart old geezer is willing to hand him any item of his choosing for free in return for the coin. Arthur monitors his surroundings and fails to accept that even a single one is worth the silver coin he just lost. Bro is on the brink of losing his patience and constantly reminding himself that he's got to respect the elderly. He inspects the shop and realizes that it's quite old and dusty to no end. The geezer doesn't even bother cleaning it because he thinks it's just fine. Arthur investigates around until he spots a cat-like creature that runs away upon seeing him. He checks a ring box and wonders if this crappy object is worth anything. Suddenly, Arthur dodges a water beam that came out of the ring. He puts it down, slowly getting more ticked off that he has to investigate a good item for his money. At last, Sylvie comes crashing down on his head. Arthur's glad she survived, while the little one is pissed he left her. The old geezer sees his pet and freezes at the sight of it. Arthur has to wave his hand around to snap him back into his senses. The boy didn't find anything worth his time, so he just wants his coin back now. The shop owner thinks he's got a terrible eye for things. He tosses Arthur something valuable and scoots him out of the place without an explanation. The door closes shut, and the boy once again sees the cat from before. He returns to his family, without having found anything worth his time. Tabitha expresses that the place is always overcrowded, so it's impossible for him not to find anything worthwhile. But her description doesn't match the experience he just went through. When they decide to revisit the same damn place, it's no longer a rundown shack, but a damn mansion. The scene cuts off to our least favorite mage, Lucas. He's come to meet someone. The leader of the group is glad that Lucas came to join them here. However, the arrogant mage quickly corrects them, stating that he's got no interest in joining a group of clowns. He came here on behalf of Charles and doesn't find anything impressive so far. The subordinates of the group call him a mutt, angering Lucas. But before he's even capable of responding, their leader incinerates the man in a brutal column of flames. While Lucas intended to do the same, he's shocked that the spell lacks a presence of mana. He wants to inquire more information about the cult, specifically on why it is requesting his aid. Turns out these bastards are the ones that are drugging the students too. The leader emphasizes that his plans reach beyond the scope of the academy. However, a bunch of conditions are stopping him from fulfilling his goal. He needs more capable mages on his side, and Lucas just so happens to be one of them. When the rest of them are trash human nobles in their group, Lucas shows promise. He wonders if the boy also feels disgusted by the academy's motto and mission. Lucas Wykes seriously hates the fact that he has to share classes with weaklings whom he could defeat at any point. The same goes for the trash